In the late 12th century, PrithViraj Chauhan set out to fulfill a vow of Dikvijaya, the conquest of all regions. He intended to expand his borders in every direction, establishing his rule as the dominant power in northern India. The primary target of this campaign was the kingdom of Jajakabuti, known today as Bundelkhand, a region prized for its wealth and strategic position. These lands were held by the powerful Chandela king, Paramardi, who governed from his capital at Mahaba. Medieval ballads like the PrithViraj Raso and the Al-Hakand describe the ensuing campaign in apocalyptic terms. In these accounts, the Chauhan forces didn't just win, they completely erased the Chandela Empire. However, these accounts were the work of court bards, whose survival depended on immortalizing their patron's glory. We have to consider whether this total annihilation happened, or if the bards were simply fulfilling their duty to the crown. Comparing these poetic traditions with contemporary stone inscriptions reveals a significant gap between the legend of the conquest and the actual geopolitical results. According to folklore, the war began with a mistake. PrithViraj's army was returning to Delhi after a grueling battle with Turkic forces when they became disoriented and unknowingly encamped within the Chandela capital. When the king's gardener tried to remove the soldiers from the royal grounds, the tension escalated into a skirmish, and the gardener was killed. The incident fractured the Chandela court. General Udal argued against a full-scale retaliation, but King Paramardi's brother-in-law, Mahil Parihar, pushed for war, secretly hoping to see the kingdom weakened. The king took the advice of his brother-in-law, but the subsequent attack led by Udal was unsuccessful. PrithViraj defeated the contingent and continued his march toward Delhi. Disgusted by the king's reliance on the scheming Mahil, the legendary generals Alha and Udal left the Chandela court to serve the Gahadvala ruler, Jaichand of Kanauj. With the kingdom's best defenders gone, Mahil sent a secret message to PrithViraj, informing him that the Chandela borders were now wide open for a full-scale invasion. The legendary narrative suggests that these internal political fractures were far more damaging than the invading army itself. PrithViraj returned to Jajakabuti in force, starting with the siege of Sirsagar. It was a costly victory. The Chauhan army reportedly lost 8 generals before the fort finally fell. The Chandelas successfully negotiated a truce, but it was merely a tactic to buy time for Alha and Udal to return from Kanauj with reinforcements. They arrived with a massive allied force. The ruler of Kanauj had dispatched his own sons and his finest generals to stand with the Chandelas against the Chauhan advance. Despite this combined strength, the legend claims PrithViraj achieved a final decisive victory, after which his forces sacked the city of Mahoba. While the bards tell a story of total collapse, the modern poor inscriptions from 1182 offer a more grounded account of the conflict's aftermath. These stones confirm that PrithViraj did lay to waste parts of the kingdom, but they also highlight where the military reality began to deviate from the poetic accounts. The physical evidence defines the limits of this campaign, marking the difference between a temporary military occupation and a permanent change in borders. The ballads claim King Paramardi died or went into exile after the fall of Mahoba. However, historical records show he continued to rule as a sovereign king for nearly 10 years after PrithViraj himself had died. Analysis by historians like Cynthia Talbot suggests that while the raid was devastating, PrithViraj completely failed to annex the Chandela territory into his own empire. Even scholars who suggest a brief occupation, like R.B. Singh, agree that any Chauhan control over these lands was unstable and short-lived. The Chandelas retained their administrative grip on the region, maintaining the infrastructure and social order that defined their heartland. The continued construction of massive, intricate temples provides physical proof of the kingdom's cultural resilience. The Chandelas possessed enough wealth and stability to continue their architectural legacy long after the Chauhan army withdrew. PrithViraj Chauhan's campaign was a violent and effective raid, but it did not end the Chandela era as the bards claimed. While the songs of the poets describe a final curtain fire, the enduring stone temples of Mahoba confirm that the Chandelas simply outlasted the invasion.